Good afternoon, everyone. So, like Guilherme said, I'm a data scientist at Xpand IT, like you can see in this huge slide. And today I will be talking about working in an agile environment while as a data scientist. But first and foremost, I would like to introduce you this amazing team of superheroes. These are all the data scientists at Xpand IT, and we have all the normal superpowers, you know, so like anti-churn ray, supervision to take insights from data, and all that stuff. And from me, I'm called Nuno Chicória, and you can see a bit of my studies and progressions until I arrived at Xpand IT. So I started my journey as a biochemist. I did some bioinformatics, and then in 2019, I made a switch into consultancy and data science, and this all led me to be a speaker today here at the SPA Insights. But you may ask why I'm giving these insights into biochemistry. Why is this important? I do believe that unlike other areas in the IT and in consultancy like big data and business intelligence, which have much more straightforward problems and solutions, data science is an area where you can draw a lot of parallelisms with academia. So instead of working in a more straightforward line, we have to work in this kind of feedback loop. So just like in academia, we have a problem that we have to solve. Most of the times, because the client postulates the problem in a way that maybe it's not the correct way or is not so aware of what he can do with the data. So it's very important that we question what we are doing, we look at the data and maybe even understand, does the data that we have can answer the problem at hand? Maybe we can solve a better problem. So this is why we get into this loop where we identify the problem, we understand it, we start to analyze the data, we take some conclusions, we communicate, and this may lead to either improve the solution, come to a new problem with a better solution, etc., etc. But you can see, while you are in a loop, this is very interesting in the academia field because you are always researching, always doing new stuff. But when you are working with a client, we have a deadline. You have to know when to stop, when to break the cycle. So this is why we add what we call the second cycle. It's important to add value to the solution you are creating. So we have, after the first loop, for example, we take an action. We deploy the model. We see what information it gives us. So together with the information we already have, we can add some feedback from how the model is performing, what the client is thinking about this solution, and this can even help us further add to the solution and even add more value to what we are doing. And then here at Xpand IT, we try to merge all of this, so this data science process, this feedback loop, everything with the Agile methodology, and we built what we'd like to call the XP4DS flow, and this is built around three main pillars. I would say the first one is the most important one, where you do the viability analysis. This is where we understand the problem at hand, the data that we have. Can we solve it with this? Do we need extra data? Maybe we need to look at the problem in a different light, and we will not move further into the process if we come to a viability analysis that says that this is not possible to be done. The second step, I would say, is the one that we almost like. It's the modeling aspect of it. We are playing with data, we are creating models, and this is all very interesting. But this is also a step where we have to set very clear goals, because otherwise we can get lost into optimizing and testing different models for eternity. So it's very important that before we enter this stage, we have a clear goal set with the client, so we know, okay, this is where we stop, the model is good enough. And the first phase, although it is the last one, I also believe it to be one of the most important ones, because you can build the most beautiful model that solves all your problems in your life, but if you do not deploy it, if the client doesn't know how to work with the model, then the model is worth close to zero. So it is very important that you also are able to deploy the model within the client's infrastructure, and there is an ability to also monitor the model along its life cycle, how it's performing a long time, because trends change and maybe the performance of the model may decrease. In this, you can see more or less where we try to match all this methodology with the Agile methodology, how we try to define our sprints, and what things we try to look for in the in the different steps. So, but maybe more importantly, I will show you now 2 use cases where it was important that we use this methodology. I will show you a use case where it's more focused on the business aspect of the problem and how this helped, and then a second one where we focus more on the technical aspects of the problem. So the first example is, I will call it here the COVID-19 and the moratoriums. It's a very relevant and recent event that happened to all of us. And the problem here is we were working with a client in the banking area, and they had a lot of customers with loans, either personal or mortgages. And with the moratorium, it's like this, the client becomes a Schrödinger client. At the same time, he's either able and unable to pay the loan. We don't know because he's under the moratorium. So what may happen is when the moratorium ends, the client automatically enters in default because he's not able to pay the loan anymore. And this is undesirable either to the customer because he enters in default, and to the client because he has a customer who is not paying the loan. So looking at the 3 main stepping stones of our process, these were the main takeaways that we took from this project. So the idea here was to identify these clients without knowing directly if they were able or not to pay, and try to, as soon as possible, get in contact with them, maybe try to restructure their loan so they wouldn't enter in default. So in the viability analysis, we took some main takeaways. It was a short time to market because we needed to act very fast, so we couldn't lose much time analyzing data. What this implies is we need to work with available info and create maybe simple features and metrics that help us identify these clients. On the modeling phase of it was important that the model had explainability because we were working with sensible data, we were working with the client's money. So it's important that it was explainable because they were going to action over what this model was saying, and it was also important for them when they reached the customers to explain, I'm contacting you because X and Y, not just because this black box told me, okay, I'm going to call this person. It had to be a fast model, and it had to be reliable. This, for the deployment phase, we had to work with close quarters with the client because we did the first round of contacts with customers. Then they give us feedback of, okay, this X number of customers, they were not in danger of entering default. It was not necessary to call them. So we go back and maybe we restructure some of the metrics or some of the thresholds we were doing, and then we do another round. So this was, like I said, it had a very short time to market, so it was very fast-paced. And with this methodology and having everything defined, it helped us create a good model that was able to satisfy the client's needs. Okay. The second aspect, the second study case is a more, let's say, it's more focused on the technical aspects of the problem. So in this, with this client, this was an online retail client that was specialized in selling shoes. What I didn't know before working with this client is each brand decides in which order the photos appear. So maybe Adidas wants the right shoe showing face front in the first picture. Puma maybe wants the 2 shoes facing sideways. And this is decided by the person who's making the shoes. But this company had to organize these pictures manually. So this was a menial task, and it was very prone to error. What we were asked to do was an algorithm that would identify and sort the pictures automatically. So the main takeaways from here were in the viability analysis, there was a need to label the data set. We had huge amounts of pictures, but they were not labeled. They had their informations in the titles, but they were not in, let's say, they were not all the same. So we had to do scraping, we had to do a bit of NLP to extract all the information from those titles and label all those pictures. And this, of course, was the most important step because this is very cliche, but like we all say, like with good data, you can create a good model. With bad data, you'll never create a good model. So we took a lot of time to do this properly, and it was also very time consuming. The second step because we spent so much time on the first one, we had to work smart and not hard. So what we did was find a neural network that was already pre-trained. It was a convolutional neural network, and the convolutional layers were already trained with millions of objects, and then we just trained the dense layers to identify. We created 3 models here, one to identify if it was 1 or 2 shoes, if the shoes were facing front or to the side, and if they were facing on the side, if they were facing the outside or the inside of the shoe. And we created a modeling pipeline with this, and then we did the deployment of the model, and this model gave instant feedback. So we set a threshold of confidence, and if it was below that threshold, the client would look at the pictures and say if the labeling was correct or not, and this would instantly add new information to the data set, and the model will be automatically retrained each month. So, yeah, to conclude, this was my presentation. This is how we try to approach our problems at Xpand IT, because like I said, data science can be prone for us to work the data a lot and remain in the cycle for a long time. So we try to break that infinite loop by creating simple and very defined steps so we can all deliver good and quality projects to the client.